Giving free one-sided therapy to the stars of reality. It's Rachel and Kacie with CBT and the TV. CBT and the TV.
Hello, darlings, dears, and fellow queers, and welcome back to CBT in the TV. As always, I am Kacie, not Rachel.
And I am Rachel, not Kacie.
And this week we will be going over season 1, episode 6 of Dance Moms, titled Dying to Dance. And unfortunately, they're going to take that a little too literally for our comfort level. So we do have a disclaimer to open this episode. It will contain some details that some of our listeners may find disturbing or upsetting. Please skip this episode if you feel that is or maybe what is best for you. There is absolutely no time in the world where our listener count or retention ratios will ever be more important to us than y'all's well-being. Don't even question it. If talk of children going anywhere that isn't safe and warm and happy, and being safe and warm and happy is not what is best for you. I don't know why you might be listening to this season of this podcast, because it's Dance Moms and the children are not all safe and warm and happy in this environment in general. But in this episode in particular, maybe take a break. Maybe go listen to something else for a minute, or go listen to one of our other episodes and come back next time. If you are going to listen to this episode, Rachel has some resources for you in case this brings up any extra unpleasant emotions.
As always, you can call 988, which is the crisis helpline. It is similar to 911, except for specifically for mental health, where a trained professional is there to speak to you. There's also the crisis text line. You text the word home to 741-741, and they both have internet chat abilities. So I have linked to those websites there in the event that is what's easiest for you, should it not necessarily be safe to talk on the phone.
Alrighty, and with all that fun stuff, thank you, Rachel. Let's go ahead and dive into Rachel and Kacie's Jar of Fun. Alright. A fun fact about each other. So I could say a fun fact about you, and you could say a fun fact about me.
Oh dear.
I hope this isn't a cop-out. I hope you don't take this as a cop-out, but I would say that Rachel is immensely vocally talented when it comes to singing, and I think a lot of people don't know that about her. You like, even if you see what she does like in her solo study on TikTok, if you've seen any of her singing videos, that does not at all tell you what her true talent is. She can learn a part very quickly, and she can meld into a group's sound really well. And having studied vocal music for as long as I did, I know that isn't easy, and I just think it's a really incredible talent that she has that gets overlooked sometimes.
Oh, thanks. I got a warm and fuzzy.
Good, that was the idea.
My fun fact about Kacie, she has a heart for special needs kids, but specifically
support
for Down
needs.
syndrome support needs. Thank you. We call them exceptional children down here. She particularly has a heart for children with Down syndrome. She has a brother with Down syndrome, and introduced me to Happy Soul Project with Little Miss Pippi, who has Down syndrome. So that is a big heart piece that Kacie has.
Well, I love the cred out of anyone who knows me knows I love the cred out of my brother. Also, anyone who knows me knows that I have the coolest big brother on the face of the planet. There were people who we went to college with that had gone to high school with my brother. We went to 2 different high schools, and when they found out who I was, they were like, "Oh my god, you don't even know how cool he is." I'm like, I do, and I'm glad to listen to all of your stories. I love to hear about all this, but trust me, I'm aware. I mean, one time I took a picture of him eating ice cream at a local ice cream shop, and the look on his face, I posted on Instagram and tagged where we were, and the ice cream shop contacted me the next day and was like, "Hey, can we use this in our ad campaign?" And I was like,
Of course they did.
I'm gonna have to ask our mom first, but yeah, like only him, let's check in with our snacks and drinks and remind our listeners to hydrate and feed themselves as well. Rachel, what do you got with you today?
I just finished eating dinner, but I had McDonald's, so I have a Fanta.
Very nice. All right, I went to H Mart today, which I love. It is an Asian grocery store, and it has all kinds of cool and fun stuff. And I got an Asian pear sparkling drink, and it's super yummy. And then they had plums. We don't usually get plums this time of year, so I was really excited to see them, and I have one. All right. Without further ado, we can't lollygag
Casey, here's
any
your drink.
longer. Let's get into it. All right.
You can tell which one of us is the mental health professional because I'm totally cool talking about
I want to do it.
I'm totally cool talking about the deep, dark, heavy topics because that's what I do every day at work. So
the last few years that I was like heavily working in education, like with the children, we're all full of the heavy stuff like COVID, and I just want the children to be happy and have lovely, wonderful lives, and I'm so tired. I don't want to do this one. All right.
That made me think of that scene in that one movie. She doesn't even go here.
I don't go here, okay, guys? I don't go to this one. This isn't for me. All right. So, day one, we open at Pyramid. The girls are already there, sitting on the floor. Abby's already yelling at them. And she wants to make sure that the girls are going to take this weekend's Star Power Regionals super seriously. They're going to Providence, Rhode Island. This is Star Power's last regional before nationals, and this is their last chance to qualify for nationals. So there will be lots of groups competing to try and qualify for nationals. I cannot tell you how many times Abby says qualify for nationals in this short segment.
If any one of our listeners wants to watch and count how many times she
says the words qualify and nationals, I wish I had money. I wish I had gotten reimbursement for how.
You will get a special shout out next episode.
Yes, if you contact us and let us know, we will drop your name. Your handle, whatever you want us to say is what we will say. All right, we don't get absolutely any commentary on the pyramid because that's not what Abby's thinking about, but we can see it. And this week's pyramid order is Maddie, of course, at the top, then Chloe, then Paige, then Brooke, Nia, then Vivi, and Kenzie. Abby gives new solos to Maddie, Brooke, and Chloe, and this upsets Holly because she feels, as she tells us in an interview, that she's losing confidence in Abby because she feels like Nia's getting passed over for opportunities. And as I watched this episode a couple of times to like really make sure I had everything done in my notes. And part of me, I wonder if this has something to do with Vivi, and not in she was mad at Vivi kind of way, but before Vivi came for the show and after Vivi left, in and out of the show, Mackenzie and Nia were often paired together for duets. And one thing like that Holly talks about is it's not just about solos for her. She doesn't care if Nia has a trio or a solo or a duet. She just wants Nia to have some opportunities. And I was like, I wonder if it's because she's seen as a steep decrease in how often Nia's getting to perform because the show took away her duet partner. Abby talks about this competition having some slightly different age categories, and this foreshadows some trouble for us coming up in the episode because it wasn't going to have enough already. Maddie will be dancing in the 8 and under category, Abby tells us. Chloe will be dancing in 9 to 11, and Brooke will be competing in the preteen category. Abby tells the girls that with this difference this week, she'll want to make sure that everyone's solo matches where they are at the end of this dance season since they've worked so hard, and not rely on where they were at the beginning of the season. And I think it was nice to kind of see Abby say this about all three of them. Be like, I really want to make sure everyone's solos are up to par, because we very rarely ever get to hear Abby say anything like this. Christy tells us she's excited for Chloe to have the opportunity to compete in her own age category instead of being pitted against Maddie like she usually is, and that this gives both of the girls a chance to win, and she's happy about that. Abby tells us about the group dance, saying that it will have all of the girls in it this week, including Mackenzie and Vivi. The dance is called Where Have All the Children Gone? And when she says this, the older girls kind of look around at each other like excitedly. And if you know more about that, it's because this happened to have been a dance that some of the older, not older girls on this team, but like older girls at Abby's studio had performed a few years before. And so the younger girls were really stoked. Like, they were ready. They were like, "Ooh, it was creepy and cool, and I want to do it too." Abby tells us that this is a very scary and mature piece about children who become missing. Abby, throughout this episode, will riff on this idea, and it's gonna change and it's gonna morph. But as of right now, it's supposed to be about children who go missing. Abby tells the moms she doesn't want any discrepancies or opinions. Interesting choice of words there, Ab. The girls are excited. The moms are worried. Abby's blathering. Typical day at the studio. Abby tells us in an interview that this is big regionals for them, so she wants to make a good impression and make sure that this dance is clean and simple. We'll see how that goes. But she wants to make sure that it tells a story, because that is what the people and the judges are looking for in an overall award-winning number, and I would say I agree. Abby dismisses the moms, and she has the girls get right to work. Like, no. The moms are in dance jail watching the group dance with an intensity that I really hadn't seen since Electricity in week 2.
I wonder why.
Yeah, right. Abby tells us in a voiceover that Where Have All the Children Gone is again this episode has so much repetition of the same things. It felt a little like we were watching My Super Sweet 16 again, where they just were not trusting us to pick up the themes. They're like, we want to make sure you know. She also tells us that while the original concept was just kids that go missing or are abducted, like the ones you see on the news every night or the ones on the milk carton, she's going to talk about the milk carton a few times, which I think is funny, because if you ask, like, when the girls have been asked in later interviews, they were like, we had no idea what she was talking about with the milk cartons, which is fair, because Rachel, I don't know about you, but when we were young, like, we saw the milk carton thing in like movies to kind of drive home the point, but it wasn't something that was actually happening anymore. You didn't have kids on milk cartons anymore in real life. It was just a thing that happened in TV. By the time these girls, who are about 10 years younger than us, would have been around, I don't even think they were doing that in TV and movies. So they were like, what is with the milk carton? What is the milk? What is she talking about?
I think the last time I remember hearing anything about it was Cheaper by the Dozen.
Yeah. You're going to end up on a milk carton.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie came out when you and I were young enough to be excited to go see a movie with Lizzie McGuire in it in the movie theaters. Okay?
So true. That came out
that's a long time ago.
2003.
Yeah.
That was 20 years ago.
Yeah. We were babies when that came out. These children, Brooke might have been out and about. And
she might have been born by then.
That's what I'm saying. Out. She came out. Abby says that while it started out as this idea about the kids on the milk carton, this hypothetical milk carton that none of the children know what she's talking about, it has now begun to morph, and now maybe there's some bullying. And when she says bullying, she does this weird hand gesture, and I'm just like, there was some bullying, and people were being mean to them. And I'm like, Abby, you should not be allowed to choreograph a serious dance piece about something this serious that you're telling the children to be scared of if you yourself cannot take it seriously. No.
She shouldn't be choreographing anything about things that she is actively doing.
Maybe there was some bullying, and I had to change some of the words here. So I said making, and the children are making themselves go away because I can't.
Do you want me to say the word every time it comes up?
You can do that, but I also refuse to directly quote Abby Lee Miller talking about children harming themselves. She doesn't take it seriously. I'm not quoting her about it. In an interview, Chloe tells us that poor Chloe, this interview was so cute, but also kind of sad. She's like, I really don't know what this dance is about. If I'm being honest, I mean, Miss Abby says that this is still happening and people need to know about it. Like, you can tell she knows that it's serious and she's supposed to really be taking it to heart. And but she has no idea. And also, not just because these children they would have been very sheltered, they're very well cared for and loved and live largely very happy lives, so they wouldn't know about a lot of this. They're also
at
too
this
young
point in time.
Yeah, they're also largely too young to be getting into any of this sort of stuff. Abby can't explain anything to anybody.
It's amazing she gets any choreography done.
It's amazing she gets any. A part of me is like, that's why she teaches vocabulary so much, so she can just yell the words at the children, because she couldn't explain if she wanted someone to do something called a flying saucer leap, she'd have to be able to explain a flying saucer. She can't do that. She can't. Back in dance jail, Kathy is absolutely horrified by the whole situation. She says she loves dark stuff. I do want to address how many times we're going to use the word dark in this episode. So I'm going to try only to use the word dark when I'm quoting someone. Kathy used the word dark. The words we use to talk about things that are uncomfortable, we tend to use words that are associated with things that we find in the world that are uncomfortable. I don't want to do that. But Kathy here is using the word dark. So I'm going to use the word dark.
And we may use the word distressing. We may use the word upsetting, depressing,
unhappy.
Sad.
But here I'm using the word dark because that's the word she uses and I'm quoting her.
And she loves pink. So it feels to me like that's a good contrast for her to use.
I also think she didn't know different words at the time. I also think even if we sat Kathy down and told her the different words, I don't know that she'd adopt them. That's my personal opinion. I can't actually speak to what Kathy would do, but that's what I think would happen. She says she loves dark stuff. She does dark stuff all the time at her studio. She's even done missing children stuff before, but she really does not think that this is age appropriate for Kenzie and Vivi. Kelly tells us she's fine with it. She doesn't think the girls listen that hard to the lyrics or even know that much of what's going on. And I do want to point out again that Kelly was a dancer at Abby's studio. So she knows what it's like to have Abby try and explain. She knows what it's like to have Abby try and explain difficult subject matter to you when you're supposed to carry it off in a dance and be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Miss Abby. And have to do it over and over and over again. And she's like, these girls are doing it every week. I was doing it like maybe once a month at TAPS. Like, I bet she's like, I'm not that worried.
She's probably seen the number before because they had been around the studio for a while.
And I just think she's like, I don't think they're going to ingest enough of it for them to be worried about it long term.
Yeah.
Christy and Holly are both very uncomfortable and they're worried about the impact that this dance will have on all of the girls long term. I have to say personally, Rachel, I'm of two minds here because, again, I don't even like talking about this. I definitely wouldn't necessarily want to talk about it with children. But when I did choreography and I did teach dance, I did sometimes tackle difficult subject matter. I also have to say sometimes kids get difficult subject matter a lot easier than grown-ups do. You don't have to over-explain it to them. You can give them one example and they'll be like, oh, so this and this and this and this, all that. And you're like, yeah. What? Why can't adults do that? This would have been so much more difficult talking to an adult. I understand that the moms want to protect their children. Lots of us want to protect children. However, this particular subject matter could affect these girls at any moment. And I don't even mean any one of these girls could be taken or could be bullied. Any one of their friends could. I knew 4 children that went missing before I was 2 went missing because of a familial miscommunication. The family planned a surprise for the parents, and so an aunt and uncle came and picked them up from daycare because they were on the list of approved people, and they didn't tell the parents. And this was before cell phones. The parents came to pick up their kids, and the children weren't there. And it was, the mom was on the floor crying of the daycare, and we were sitting at the table coloring right next to her. The other 2 children I knew did not return. I'm not saying that Abby is at all the person to prepare these children for this, but I am saying that there's a lot of stuff that it's kind of like with sex education, right? Like a lot of parents are like, no, I don't want my kid learning about that in school. But then those are often the parents who don't want to talk about it with their children at home either in ways that are actually helpful. So where are the kids getting the information? From real life experience. But that is not the best teacher for this.
No.
I can tell you at 7, almost 8 years old, sitting at the table coloring was not the best place for me to learn about what happens when a child goes missing. That was terrifying. And the adults around us didn't talk about it. When the twins came back the next day, they were told they weren't allowed to talk about what happened. The teachers kept telling them, do not talk about it. And we were told not to ask them questions. It was dramatically uncomfortable. And again, this was the late 90s. It's not like people had all the information we have now.
Yeah. But
this isn't something, it's something that's easy to look away from, but it doesn't mean that that's the thing you should do.
I think too, at the time frame in which these girls are growing up, social media is really big. So they are going to be exposed to this a lot more. I mean, we know that depression doesn't really care about your age. Kids of any age, I have seen articles, kids as young as 9, 10, ending their own lives. I mean, we've heard of, J.C. Dugard and Elizabeth Smart and like a bunch of names. Like growing up, we thought this was something that was a common occurrence to just be taken off of the street. And our parents kind of put that into our minds to be wary and watchful because that could happen at any time. So it's not a topic that is not uncommon. And I think that to not talk about it does kids a disservice because they're going to have questions and they're going to want to know. And it is far better to be transparent with them and have those conversations and give them the vocabulary to talk about these things than to have them wondering or fearful that this is something that's going to happen to everybody.
That at any moment it could happen to any of them.
And I think it also destigmatizes. Later on, we'll hear about suicide. And I think it destigmatizes that to the point where, oh, okay, if I'm feeling this way, I can talk to my parents about it. Like, I don't have to hide this. I can share about this because it's just something that we talk about. It's a
thing that happens in the world.
It's not taboo. It's not something to be ashamed of.
It's not a bad thing.
It really normalizes kind of introducing it into the world and being like, okay, like this is a thing that people experience sometimes. And right now I'm experiencing it and I'm able to share that with my parent because we've had these talks about it and they've made it make sense. They've made it really comfortable. They've answered all my questions. So I feel safe enough to talk to them about it and get the help that I need. And I think a lot of times parents think that talking about that stuff is going to make their child less innocent or traumatize them. And it won't. It will not necessarily traumatize them.
I think that's a lot of the parents' own fear, right? Like their discomfort. They're so uncomfortable with it. It's almost like the loss of their parenting innocence. Like once you have any of the talks with your kid, you've crossed that milestone. It's a parenting milestone that a lot of people don't want to reach because you want to stay in that like happy, but it doesn't do anything negative to the child, and largely it won't change anything about your child's life experience except prepare them better. But it changes your perspective on parenting, and that's what's difficult.
Yeah, I think a lot of I have those conversations sometimes with parents whose kids were exposed to things at a very young age, and they're like, how much, when do I talk to this about them? How much do I talk to this about? And I'm
All the
like,
time. Anytime.
if you want your child to stop looking up inappropriate videos, they're curious, have those conversations with them. Make it demystify it. Make it not so something that they're curious about anymore. Like, just lay it on out there, because then they're going to be like, oh, okay, bye.
How do you cure curiosity? You find
You
out
answer
the
the
information. You allow
question.
them the information. The girls finish choreography, and Abby talks to them about how they're doing the steps of the dance just fine, but they're not telling the story. And this story is so important that if they don't do it just right, if they don't do a good enough job, they might hurt someone in the audience who's had this happen to them. And when Abby tells this to the girls, if you look at Maddie looks stricken. Like, honestly, I think this is the face Maddie might have had at this age if someone had walked up and slapped her. She looks hurt. She takes this so personally. Like, her face says, oh my God, I'm doing it wrong. If I don't do this perfect, I could hurt someone with my dancing.
I mean, that can develop, paired with anxiety, particularly, like, that is a slippery slope to developing patterns of OCD.
Well, and I was going to say, like, there's some other stuff we're going to talk about regarding Maddie and anxiety in this episode. But I like, how is this child ever going to not develop anxiety? You don't tell a child your dancing is going to hurt someone unless they're literally going to turn in. Like, if she's not going to do a pirouette and land on Mackenzie, leave her alone. You gave her the thing to do. And if you can't help her do it correctly, that's on you, not on the 8-year-old. Not ever on her.
Have the life experience to pull from. Like, they don't have the context to fully grasp and understand the emotion and what exactly is this dance supposed to be about. Like, they don't have that background to play off of.
They don't have, so as someone who did dance education, they don't have the ability to be given this thing, right? Like, they don't have the ability to be given this particular story. Children who go missing, are taken, or hurt themselves without any other prep. Be like, here's this story, go do it. They don't have, you're right. But this whole thing was completely avoidable. Back in dance jail, Christy asks if everyone knows what tomorrow is, and we find out that it's going to be Kelly's 40th birthday. Kelly tells us in an interview that she's not sure how to feel. On one hand, it's a new chapter for life, and she's looking forward to that. On the other hand, she feels kind of old, and she doesn't know what to do about it. We find out that Christy has something planned very special for Kelly's big day, and she wants everyone to come, and she wants everyone to have fun. Regina, Kacie, says that since Kelly's hit the big 4-0, she really needs to get some Botox done.
Mm-hmm.
And all the moms are taken all the way back. Kelly's like, what, am I that old? And don't get me wrong, even though I'm 1,000,000% sure that this was a production ploy, because production had to go and approve the location that they end up filming at and all that good stuff, this still feels very Kacie.
It does.
It does. Holly says absolutely not. She's never going to do it. She loves her lines and wrinkles. She feels they add character. And, like, we love Holly. Queen Holly. Again, I'm going to say I have nothing against cosmetic procedures, but I have everything against doing anything that Kacie says to do. If Kacie got army pants and flip-flops, I would burn my army pants and flip-flops.
I love it.
Christy tries to get out of it because she's like, look, I'm only 34. I don't think I need it. And Kacie tells her that she definitely needs it with all those lines on her forehead. And Kacie makes more nasty comments about Christy's face in particular in an interview. And I don't want to go into it because fuck Kacie. I'm not quoting her anymore. Christy ponders in an interview whether Kathy only wants the moms to feel old because of her own insecurities about being the oldest person in the group. And I can't even read that. I can't watch that scene and I can't read that line without laughing. I'm like, hey, look, I don't even have to ask Rachel if she thinks, like, I don't have to bring up that point. Christy, you did it for us. You analyzed the
we
whole
love
thing.
Chrissy. We love Chrissy,
Love
though.
Christy. Unfortunately, Kelly breaks it down and agrees to try it. I don't know if Kelly would have gone on her own. I think, again, this was production. Christy, to this day, still goes and gets Botox. She says she loves it. I think that's fine. Kelly does not go. So I don't know that Kelly would have gone in the first place if she hadn't had to. Both choices are fine and valid. The mom's attention turns back to the dance, but we can all tell that Holly is upset, and she ends up leaving the moms upstairs and heads down to speak with Abby. In an interview, Holly tells us again that she's just disappointed that Nia is being passed over and not given the same opportunities as the other girls. Holly pulls Abby out of class to speak with her, and she asks why Nia is being passed over. Abby tells us in an interview that all the moms want their kids to have the spotlight, but that's just not how it works. Not everyone can have the spotlight. And even when you earn it, you have to have the talent too. And watching this made me, like, I just wanted to flick her on the screen.
Don't we always?
In this, like, yes, like, low-key, I always want to flick Abby's face, but in this moment, I especially did, like, I had to stop myself from doing it, because I'm like, no, that's just going to hurt your tablet. You won't actually affect Abby Lee Miller in real life. It's not, it won't do anything. Abby tells Holly that Nia isn't improving. That Nia requires the same corrections over and over and over, and that Abby has asked Holly multiple times to come in and observe Nia's private lessons. And all of this might be true, right? All of this could be true. However, given what Abby just said in an interview, and I know how the interviews work, they're filmed after the week, but I could easily see a producer being like, tell me, Abby, what you thought about Holly coming to talk to you, and Abby giving this spiel about how all of the moms want their kids to have the spotlight by telling her, like, I can't give her any more things until she fixes the corrections, and you come in and do that. I feel like it was a prepped response. She doesn't actually mean it, and that even if Holly did these things and Nia did make the improvements, that since Nia was at the time only being given duets with Mackenzie, and Mackenzie's got this new duet partner for the show, nothing's going to change.
Well,
and that's my issue with it.
It's very blamey too. Like it's very, oh, well, it's her fault. She's not doing better, rather than, well, let's bump up her privates. Let's, her private lessons. Let me clarify. Let's, figure out what does and does not work, and work on these specific things. Rather, let's just blame the kid. Why not?
When I taught dance, I wouldn't have meant it blaming the child, but these are some of the things I would have said. Like, if a parent, Holly's schedule had been hectic. She had just graduated.
With her doctorate.
With her doctorate, but that means a lot of extra work. It might have been very hard to get her to the studio to watch Nia's private lessons, because the other time she had to be at the studio was for filming. It's not like Holly had a lot of free time. I might have had to have said to a parent, like, look, until your kids this, and this improves, and until we can have a meeting where you do come and you do observe the private lesson and we do get to talk about this, I can't do these other things. I don't necessarily disagree with the content of what Abby is saying. And if it were someone aside from Abby, or someone who operates differently from Abby, I wouldn't hear what she's saying as blamey. But I do feel like she's just paying blamey lip service and saying, like, look, until you do the things I've told you to do, I don't owe you anything, and I'm not going to do anything. It feels icky to me, because I don't think she's being 100% honest. I think she just said this to get Holly off her back. Does Nia have stuff to work on? Absolutely.
Don't we all?
Do I think, exactly. Do I think that's why Abby said it? Not really. It's the next day, and the moms go get Botox, except for our queen, Dr. Holly, because she's got bigger and better things to do than be bullied into getting cosmetic procedures by stupid Regina George wannabe. Again, I don't have anything against cosmetic procedures. I'm not saying I won't get some by myself, but
It's the
I wouldn't get.
person,
It's
not
the
the
it's the person.
activity.
Yep, it's the penguin, not the pebble. The Pebble and the Penguin is a great film, Rachel. I don't know why you're laughing at me.
It's the penguin, not the pebble.
I'm a sassy bitch. You know that. All right. Kelly and Christy are both nervous, but they go ahead and they do it anyway. And by and large, they seem glad they did it. But like I said, Kelly doesn't move forward continuing to get it. Christy does, and that's great. Back at the studio, Abby greets the girls in the dance den and tells the girls that everything they've been working for this whole season comes down to this weekend. Even though, I'm sorry, but all year, what has she been saying, Rachel? What is the thing they're working for?
Nationals.
Is this nationals? Did I miss something?
You qualify for nationals.
Maddie starts working on her solo, which we learn is a contemporary lyrical number called Beautiful. And Maddie tells us in an interview that she usually always wins in competitions because she works really hard in class. I feel like this interview was highly produced, so she worked in some stuff to make herself feel like I have to say this, but this is true. She does work very hard in class, and that does help her win. She also says she's usually dancing against 7-year-olds because she was at the top of the age category she was usually competing in that year. And I'm just like, she also tells us that there's a lot of times where she gets bumped up to the next age category, and we'll want to keep an eye on that statement for the rest of this episode. Next up is Chloe's solo rehearsal, and she tells us in an interview that she's doing a musical theater dance this week, and she says it's a cute little French dance called Parlez-moi, and she uses lots of personality, and it's a very cute, and she really likes it, and it's so nice to see her so cute and happy in this interview. I was just mimicking the way she talked, and it just gave me all the warm fuzzies. So cute.
So a little background on Miss Chloe. She wants to be, at this point in her life, she wants to be a Rockette.
Yes.
She wants to be on the Big White Way, whether it's as a Rockette or in Broadway. Like, she brings this up multiple times throughout the series.
But she specifically, her ultimate dream is to be a Rockette. So much so that outside of the show, Abby had choreographed a solo for her to a piece of music called I Want to Be a Rockette. And Chloe will tell you to this day it was one of her favorite dances. She had a beautiful costume. She loved this dance. And at that time in her life, that was what she wanted to be. She wanted to dance in the Thanksgiving Day parade, do the big Christmas spectacular. Unfortunately, Chloe's adorable rehearsal is interrupted by Abby's dog, Broadway Baby. I'm not saying that this is the dog's fault. This is Abby's fault. The dog is just let in. And I have never had a dog, Rachel, but I did want to get your input. You are a dog lover. You currently have dogs. You have always had dogs in the time that I have known you. What do you think about Abby's?
She looked a little chunky, but other than that, I think Broadway Baby was probably too spoiled.
From what I know, having learned as much about the show as I have over the years, she fed this dog almost exclusively human food. This dog had a love for McDonald's. And I cannot recall a time that we see this dog on the show that this dog's face was ever clean. It is a white dog. And that means, it's like getting a white car. You're asking for stuff to show up. But when it interrupts Chloe's rehearsal this day that we're talking about, Abby says, "Did you just get a haircut?" And I'm like, "You sent your dog to the groomers and it came back like this?" And to me, I'm probably like, you know what? The dog probably doesn't like having its face cleaned, and Abby won't do it. Because Abby spoils the dog. I'm not saying she doesn't love the dog. I'm just saying her loving the dog means she gives it whatever she wants and doesn't do whatever it doesn't want. And I don't think that's actually caring for a dog all the time.
Yeah, I don't know that Abby knows what the word boundaries is. So I think that that's probably part of it.
Back with the moms after their Botox appointment, for some ungodly reason, this episode needed to be any fucking worse. Production has Christy and Kelly go to lunch, which sounds so nice until you realize that they sent them to lunch with Kathy.
Yeah, why?
And I don't know. Like, I was watching it. I was like, can we go back to the part where they had Kathy go shopping with Melissa? I'd watch that again. I'd watch that. I'd watch that again. Please, not this today. No. And they talk about the Botox. Kathy makes fun of Christy's nose. Gross. In an interview, Christy tells us that Kathy is like an overgrown junior high girl. And again, I was just like, Christy, if there wasn't so much else going on in this episode, you'd be taking away all of our things to talk about. I'm going to say unfortunately because of what happens next, but like on the bright side, it comes to an end. On the not so bright side, it's because of how it comes to an end. It abruptly comes to a halt when Christy finds out that one of her close family members has been taken to the hospital emergently. This, we find out, is a family member who is older and is in fragile health. So it's not a surprise to Christy that they've been rushed to the hospital. This happens, but Christy is scared, understandably, and upset, understandably.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it is like the nature of the relationship that she had with this individual.
Again, very close. When I say close, I mean, I don't just mean like this is a member of her immediate family. I mean, they have a very close bond. We are going to talk about it more, though, because it's now the next day, and this whole day is Christy and Chloe going to visit one of Christy's childhood homes. We learned that Christy, as a child, bounced around between family members, that she tells us in an interview, she dreamed of the kind of stability in life that Chloe has. She always wanted to take dance lessons. And I do want to give a caveat here that this is not me saying I think that Christy is living vicariously through Chloe. We just saw in the heckin' dance recital episode that Christy herself does not want to be on stage. And there is a big difference between being a 6 to 10-year-old who dreams of taking a dance lesson and being a now 34-year-old woman who's like, yeah, I wanted that when I was a kid. I don't want to do that now. But I want, like, if I want my child to
have the opportunity.
Anyway, Christy tells us that she dreamed of the kind of stability in life that she gets to provide for Chloe. And Christy shows Chloe this dance show that she used to make her sister Chloe's aunt put on with her on the lawn, and it's such a cute and funny moment. I love it. I think that this moment tells us a lot about Christy, especially 10, 11 years later, based on all the information that Christy herself has given us in YouTube videos, different interviews, where she says that she thought if she just set everything up correctly for Chloe, that Chloe would have smooth sailing. She thought it was her job to get Chloe in the right places, to do the right things, and that if she did that, Chloe would have things not necessarily easy, but that things would be right. So when stuff like Abby picking on Chloe would happen, Christy would assume like, oh, I must be doing something wrong, and she would try to fix it.
Mm-hmm. She personalized it.
Yes, and unfortunately, we know that there was absolutely nothing that Christy could have done to fix that situation for Chloe. But that causes Christy to like tense up and have these moments where she ends up, unfortunately, like yelling at Chloe and being like, "You're fine, do good," because she can't handle the pressure, because she thinks it's all on her.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's not.
Yeah, it's not, and it's sad to watch. It's the next day again, so that was a very short day, but it's another day, day 4, and it's finally Brooke's solo rehearsal. Do you want to guess what she's doing, Rachel? Yes, it's an acro contortion number. Her dance is called Supermodel, and Brooke tells us in the Brookiest way of all, like the most I don't give a crap way possible, that if she wins regionals, she'll go to nationals, and that's what they've been working at all year. She's saying all the right things, but you can feel the ambivalence, and I am here for it. I love you, Brooke. Next up is group rehearsal. And I want to reiterate that we're going to be talking about some unpleasant stuff. Anytime we talk about the group dance, it'll contain details that some of you may find disturbing or upsetting. Please go ahead and skip this part of the episode if it's too much for you. our retention numbers are not worth your well-being. Never will be. Abby gives each of the big girls, except for Brooke, a way to unalive themselves in the dance. They don't have props, which part of me is like, thank God, but on the other side, it's kind of awkward to watch them do these things without props because it just looks
Weird.
It looks weird. Abby tells us in an interview that she wants her girls to be able to do everything, the fun stuff to the dark stuff. This is what Abby said. She wants them to be able to tell a story that some of them can't understand. Abby said this, and I'm just like, Abby, if you think they can't understand it or do the thing, more aptly, if you can't help them understand it, don't fucking do it. Like, you were almost there. It was right here, and you walked around it.
Oh, God. There's the point.
Thankfully, next up, we head to Kelly's house for her birthday party and some fun. She tells us in an interview that Christy invited herself over to her house for this birthday party. And I'm like, yeah, Kel, that's how best friends work.
I mean,
I don't like I love that they included this in the episode, but I thought it was so silly of Kelly to say this. I'm like, yeah, babe. If your best friend can't invite themselves over to your house, like you don't
Are you
have
even best friends?
Best friend. In attendance, we have Kelly and Christy, obviously, and then we also have Holly and Melissa, but we have no Kathy. Hooray! I feel sad that
loved that though.
Yes, I do feel bad that like if the girls were all together, I feel sad that Vivi would have missed out, but I'm not sad that Kathy's not here.
I don't know that they had that kind of relationship with Vivi though, because Kathy didn't really let her associate with
that's
them.
what I'm saying. Is like they missed out. She missed out on stuff like this, so she could never get to that. This is where you get that.
Unfortunately, I think her mother precluded her from attending.
Oh, decidedly. And it makes me sad. The moms do kick in presents, and we get the first instance of something that will be a recurring theme. Melissa being a very dirty bird. She bought Kelly a bunch of boudoir-themed gag gifts. Some candy, like the stuff, like candy necklaces, that material, but underwear for her and her husband, who is aptly named Randy for this segment. And Christy just kind of loses. She's like, oh my God, if you eat that off of Randy, I'm going to lose my shit. And she also got Kelly some animal print handcuffs, furry handcuffs. And Christy tells us in a voiceover, she's like, Melissa's the dirty one of the group. Like, she really is. And
if that ain't the truth, though, the most innocent one is always going to be like the dirtiest. Yeah, I don't know that Melissa understands all of her boundaries either.
We're headed to competition, and as the girls are loading up the bus, Christy gets another phone call, only to find out that her family member's condition has worsened, and they've been moved to the ICU and placed on a ventilator, which at the time, I don't know that a lot of us would have known how serious that is, but since the pandemic, we know how dire being placed on a ventilator can be. Not good. Christy is, again, understandably very distraught and questions whether she should go to the competition. Kelly comes over and helps Christy process. This is a really nice moment to watch their friendship. It's not a happy moment, so it's not like, oh, this is such a sweet moment, but like, this is a moment where you're not watching anything having to do with dance. This is just Kelly showing up for Christy.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly reminds Christy that, like, look, if you need to leave Chloe with us, she's going to be loved and supported out the wazoo. You don't need to worry about her. Kelly also knows Christy's family, and she's like, you know what your family member would say. And Christy's like, yeah, she would say, how dare you be here in the hospital with me when your baby is on stage? You are supposed to be with the baby. They hug it out, and Christy ends up getting on the bus and going with her. It's a very good moment that showcases their friendship in a very real way. Just like I think the party kind of showed us a real moment of them being chosen family, the actual chosen family. And they weren't talking about dance. They weren't doing any of that. This was just them really
existing,
being together, and it was nice. We arrive at the competition, and as everyone's getting ready, Abby helpful as ever, and not at all in any kind of way that would stress the girls out and make them nervous before they're right about to go on stage. Starts yelling at the girls about what a big deal this competition is, and how if any of them want to dance nationals at all, they better do a good job today. Thank you, Abby. Your words of wisdom will be treasured for eternity. Abby then, of course, pulls the final rug out from everyone's feet, which we knew was coming. She announces that she'll be moving Maddie up and out of her age category to compete against Chloe because Maddie's just had it too easy this year, which might be true, but what the fuck, Abs? Christy looks like she just completely wants to give up. She has this look on her face like, my family member is in the ICU. I almost didn't get on the bus. Should I not have gotten on the bus? I got on the bus for this. This was the other part of the Maddie bit that I wanted to talk with you about. We're not saying Maddie's not prepared to do this. But do you think that things like this could have contributed to Maddie developing anxiety? Because even the most prepared student in the world, if they walk into class one day and the teacher's like, guess what, you're going to take your final exam today in the form of a pop quiz, it's going to have everything on it, and even if they know everything on it, that's still going to freak them out.
I mean, being a former gifted kid, even trying to keep up with your same grade peers sometimes, because there's this expectation that you're supposed to be better than them, you're supposed to score higher than them. It definitely brings about anxiety, and certainly when you don't perform in the way that you feel like is expected of you, there's a lot of like disappointment and shame and feeling guilty. It can absolutely contribute when a child feels like the expectations are up here when they're unnecessarily high.
And to have it done at the last moment. Like, Maddie was already up against those unnecessarily high expectations all the time. And then Abby's just like, oh, guess what? Here you go. And it's national qualifiers. I don't even want to question whether or not this was producers, because whether or not it was, it could have been. This is also something I think Abby would have done even if there wasn't a TV show going on. She would have happily done it.
I agree.
Christy tells us that while she's still surprised, this sort of thing just isn't surprising to her from Abby anymore, which, yep. She also tells us that Abby's so focused on getting Maddie seen in the way she thinks she needs to get Maddie seen that she sometimes spites herself. Because if she had done things the way she had said she was going to do all week, she would have had herself set up to get 3 titles. 1 for Maddie, 1 for Chloe, 1 for Brooke. And she always says she's all about the win. She wants as many trophies as she can get. She wants all the crowns. But if that were true, she wouldn't be doing this. Chloe tells us in an interview that this interview just made me really sad. Chloe looks defeated. It makes me sad, the idea that they made her talk about this after it happened. I know that they had to, but it's gross. This is gross. Chloe tells us that she really didn't want this to happen. She likes when she and Maddie don't have to compete against each other, and when they both have a chance to win. And it's just, Brooke, Kelly, and Abby finally get to take a look at the costume for Brooke's solo. I don't know why this was not planned out better. We know Abby's going to have a hard time with costumes for the rest of time, but this is particularly bad planning because the costume she has for Brooke is truly heinous. It is this pink bike tard with cutouts in the middle. If you were a millennial and you used to do t-shirt cutting where then you would tie it back together with itself, it's done that up the arm. It's only one sleeved. It has this god-awful ribbon choker with this giant feathered flower that's pushing Brooke's face in one direction. And it's hot pink with these red polka dots, which we find out are stickers. It does not look like anything that was ever supposed to be stage ready.
It was
and
not.
Brooke's supposed to be a supermodel. She's supposed to be a supermodel.
Not Abby's finest.
Especially because Brooke's supposed to be a supermodel. They're all scrambling for different options now. They're there's no way she can go on stage in this. And Abby ends up asking if Brooke can try on Vivi's top. This is how we find out that there is an unaired Brooke or Kenzie and Vivi duet, and I'm upset about it because the costume's really cute, and I'm sure that the dance would have been really cute, and I don't know why the hell we didn't get to see it. Kathy initially lets Brooke use the top, but she very she very quickly begins to have a full tilt meltdown and starts yelling at Kelly, saying how disorganized the whole studio is and how they're always taking things from her. Like, what? When are they ever taking things from you? When are they ever expecting you to do things? Isn't that usually you want them to sew your costumes? You want them to sew your things? But she ultimately doesn't want Brooke to wear the costume. Unfortunately, Kathy spent so much time having she also says, like, while she's yelling at Kelly's like, look, if you don't like how unorganized we are, if you have such like I get it. This wasn't on me. I didn't do this. But you're punishing my kid because of it. But if you don't like this, please go back to your studio. And then Kathy, does a 180 and is like, no, I'm here, so like it. Kathy spent so much time yelling at Kelly that by the time she makes the decision that Brooke cannot wear the costume, it's 3 numbers before Brooke goes on stage. She's supposed to be headed backstage. And so Kelly goes scrambling again and gets Brooke changed into plain old dance wear. It's a crop top and booty shorts. I ended up really liking this costume for the dance because it felt reminiscent of like a little girl dancing in her pajamas in her bedroom. I think it's the print of the top. It looks, I don't know, like a print you'd have on pajamas pretending to be a supermodel, and I thought it was cute. While all of this has been going on, Chloe and Maddie compete their solos. Chloe goes first, and she says that when she dances, she wants to make her mom proud. It's cute. She dances well, and she only bobbles in one spot. Christy tells us that when she watches Chloe dance, it's like magic. Chloe is her little girl, and she loves her so much, and when she's on stage, she's just perfection, and it's such a cute little... I like it. Maddie is next, and she tells us that Beautiful is kind of a difficult dance, but that she's ready for it, and she's not afraid of competing against the older girls. It's a cute little... She's ready. She knows what she's doing. And Maddie's performance is lovely, but the editors do this crappy thing where they cut into Maddie's dance several times with a Christy interview where she talks about how upset she is about Maddie having been moved up into Chloe's age category. It's not like Christy was actually talking over Maddie's dance, because again, the interviews are filmed a week after, but it makes Christy kind of like, if you're not thinking about it, it'd be like, God, Christy, stop it. Obviously, Melissa cried. We do get a shot of that. We head to solo awards for Chloe and Maddie, and Maddie beats out Chloe for first place by only half a point. And it's extra sad, again, when you think that they both could have won. They both could have had first places, and that this week was probably the week that Chloe really could have used an extra boost because she had crummy stuff going on at home. Brooke goes on to perform her solo, and she tells us in an interview that she isn't really upset that Kathy didn't want her to wear Vivi's costume. She just wished that Kathy would have said something sooner, because having to change at the very last second and having to go on stage in just a crop top and booty shorts has made her kind of nervous. Understandable. Brooke does beautifully, and she only wobbles once, which, again, like, completely understandable given the situation. I would have messed up more than once. When she comes off stage and meets the mom, she notices that Kelly's crying, and she asks why. Kelly says that Kathy just made her really pissed off with the whole thing, but that Brooke had still gone out on stage and pulled it off, and so she's proud. Kelly, once again, is just, she's open and honest with Brooke, and I think that deserves a shout out. It is now the second day of competition. This is how you know this is a really big competition. It's broken up into 2 days. And
it's your favorite day.
It's my favorite day, but first we get to do something even more fun. We find out that Kathy made Kelly sew Vivi's costume last night, and I'm just like, I would have said no. I would have full on said no. And more than that,
Kelly's your best friend. Be petty for her.
Yeah, I want, like, if you did something like that, as like as your Christy friend, I would have gone up and smacked the thing out of your hand and then like gently slapped you upside the head and been like, what the fuck are you doing? We're going to the barn now. Like, and the like even worse is that Kelly goes even further and she sews extra rhinestones on for Vivi. Like, Kelly's
wonder
just being.
if Kathy paid her.
God, I hope so. Because
That would be the only reason I would do it.
like Kelly's being, even if she did pay you, you're being too nice. Kathy's yelling at Kelly the whole time that like in person that Kelly is doing this, and she's saying like, you better hurry up. I don't plan on being late. I don't run after the kids on the way to the stage with the darning needle like you all do. And she's going off in an interview, Kathy is telling us like, I made Kelly do this all last night because she ruined my costume. And I'm just like, Kathy also makes a really nasty comment about the fact that Brooke came in 6th in her interview. She's like, Brooke didn't come in 6th because I didn't let her use the costume and made her change last second. She came in 6th because there were 6 girls who were better than her. Kelly checks in with Christy about her family situation after Vivi and Mackenzie have left the room. And Christy says she hasn't heard anything, which she assumes is good news, but decides to call to do a check-in. And we find out that the family member has improved immensely and is off a ventilator out of the ICU and asking for Christy. And yay for small wins and many happy endings in Dance Moms, because we don't get a lot of those. The girls are now getting ready for the group dance, and we're doing a final run through in the hallway. We finally find out what Mackenzie and Vivi are going to do. And we find out that Vivi is making her debut in her signature role on Dance Moms as the human prop. She will be sitting on a swing, and Mackenzie will be pushing her. This is a big moment, guys. Like, let's just take a second and soak it in. Holy cow. What a moment in history. What a time to be alive. Abby tells us she's worried that there's so much happening on stage in this number that the judges won't be able to follow it. And I just want to know who's going to tell her who did that and whose fault it is and whose problem that's going to be. The moms talk about how bizarre and uncomfy this dance is to watch. Holly says that she thinks the piece is artistically beautiful, but is also kind of jarring. And she also knows that Abby has a strategy that she doesn't share with the moms. Christy and Holly continue their conversation, saying that as worrying as the subject matter is and as uncomfortable as they are with what's going on, they know that there's absolutely no way that Abby would listen to their concerns if they brought them up to her, especially at this point. Christy says that that particular conversation would only end in Abby trying to stabby chokey them. This section, we're going to go into the dance now. So again, this section is going to contain details that some of you may find disturbing. We're going to talk about what Abby actually gave the girls to do in the dance. So if you don't want to hear about visuals of little girls harming themselves, please feel free to go ahead and end the episode now. We appreciate you listening or watching. Well, or skip forward, but
or go check out our link tree while you're.
There's very little left, so we're right up at the end. If you don't want to finish it, you don't have to. The girls take the stage, and we do get a pretty good shot of this dance, especially considering this is season 1. Like, we don't usually get to watch as much of this dance. I don't think we've watched as much of any dance as we do of this one since Electricity in episode 2, and I wish we hadn't seen as much of that one as we did. So all of the girls except for the 2 littles and who are on the swing, and I think we're just supposed to assume that those are the 2 that get abducted. And then Brooke, she's the one, she's kind of bearing witness to everything. Brooke is the storyteller, the narrator, and she's bearing witness. All of the other girls have a way that they end themselves. They unalive themselves. And I have to say, like, this sounds terrible. My personal favorite is Paige's. Just because if I had been a judge at that dance competition, it would have been crazy to watch. Abby had her jump off the stage down onto a mat. Like, she walks up to the stage, she like looks up like she's asking heaven why, and then she jumps like she's jumping off of something from a great height. And she does it right in front of the judges. I have to say that would have been fucking freaky. And it's a really cool effect, even if it's a very unpleasant thing that's happening, but it's a cool effect. Nia chokes herself. Maddie looks depressed and loses the battle to depression. We don't actually see her ending up self-harming, but like watching her acting, you can tell what's happening. I think it's kind of left up into interpretation if how she ends up ending herself, but the idea is that she's very depressed. And then Chloe stabs herself, which is the one that for me is weird to watch without a prop. Not that it would have been any better with a prop, but it's just watching a child pantomime that, it's awkward because Chloe, again, like she told us in an interview, she doesn't really get what's going on, and you can kind of tell when she's dealing with it, when she's doing it herself. She's like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is weird. But the girls do a very, very good job. Once the dance is over, Holly tells us that she actually ended up being very glad that Nia was a part of this dance, that she thought it was amazing, and that she thinks it really stretched them all as dancers. And Abby tells us that some people may have thought that this was too heavy or too mature, but she's pretty sure that some of the moms definitely did, but she's not out to please the moms. And that's one of the times where one of Abby's kind of sassier, meaner quips, I'm kind of like, yeah. We go to group awards, and of course, Where Have All the Children Gone comes in first because it was an amazingly good piece. Mm-hmm. And the girls did a very good job performing it with the limited preparation that Abby allowed them. Abby also tells us that they took the highest score of the entire competition. There were 280 acts. We don't find out what the exact score was, but Where Have All the Children Gone was the highest out of all the acts of the day. And way to go, girls. Back in the dressing room, everyone is happy. Abby is hugging all the girls, and she's nice to all the moms. And Abby has this really cute interaction with Paige, because Paige asks, "Can we go to the mall now?" And Abby kind of grabs her face, but she doesn't do it in a threatening way. She does it in kind of like, like a grabbing a cute little baby's face. And she goes, "Yes, I think you can go to the mall now." And it's a moment where I think we get to see a peek into the relationship that Abby used to have with the Highland girls. And it's cute, but it also kind of makes me sad because why wouldn't you have kept that? And it's a nice way to end the episode, especially one that covered so much tough subject matter. What do you think are your takeaways for this week, Ray? What you got? Working on destigmatization, both with younger people and with ourselves as adults, and at any age, is very important, because it prevents taboos like this, and this particular kind of topic being a taboo is highly problematic, and not in a, oh, that's bad kind of problematic. I mean, this is gonna come up, and we need to be prepared to talk about it in a way that isn't so hard. That's a problem, is what I mean. Problematic, and it's a problem.
I think I remember the first time that I was introduced to the topic of suicide, I think was 8 years old on 9/11, because they were streaming people jumping out of the buildings. And so that was kind of the first time that the topic was ever broached for me. So I think I knew kind of at a young age that this was something that happens. Some people are so hopeless, and they know that they are not going to get out of it, and they want some sort of control in what happens to them. So I kind of had that understanding, and then periodically in my life other circumstances came up, and so I think talking about it, you're never too, well, I mean, you are too young to understand sometimes, but age appropriately, if you can start talking about it and making your kid aware of it, it just makes it easier to talk about in the future. It doesn't have to be this big scary thing. It's not something they have to go explore or investigate, because sometimes kids do. Whether it's drugs and alcohol, sex, running away, like talking about that stuff demystifies it, and it makes it less scary.
And we also we live in a society where we don't utilize our village. We isolate a lot. And that makes all of this feel very overwhelming. And that's not anything that's on the individual. You're isolated, you're not isolating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how our society has evolved. You have become isolated by society. So these topics feel very overwhelming. Reach out to your village. And I don't just mean mom, dad, grandma, aunt, best friend. Go to your local library. Ask. Because talking to your children about this is going to feel scary. Ask for books about this.
Mm-hmm.
Ask for books for your age range and for your children.
Talk to the school counselor. The school counselor often has a lot of resources. If you have a school counselor, not
Google your community resources. Because
I was going to say, you can also Google books on certain topics.
Yes.
Because chances are somebody has made a book about it to be able to broach the topic with their kids.
Somebody may have written a book about it, but I will say that sometimes that can feel like just because there's a book on it, that doesn't mean that book is right for your family. And your local librarian will probably have a little more information about that book. And instead of having to weed through a bunch of books, you'll have someone helping you do that. So again, use your Google is great, but Google is something you're using in isolation. Use Google and a person, but make sure you're relying on someone who is that's part of their job. Because another thing we don't want to do is rely on someone who had to learn this particular kind of thing through experience. You don't want to ask your friend who had a family member die by suicide to tell you what kind of resources would you recommend. That's, you wouldn't want to do that. So talk to your local librarian, or,
look up authors who are mental health professionals.
Yes. Books written by mental health professionals are definitely going to be a good place to go, but not all of them are. So, do research, but don't take all of it on your own plate. Ask for help. You deserve help and you deserve community.
On the 988 Lifeline, which I believe is the one that I posted, there's a help someone else section. And it gives you kind of some signs to maybe look for, knowing the lingo, what you can do to help them if they come to you. So there's also, like, on social media, like, if you don't necessarily know them, you can know how to help them. So I will add that one to the list.
Awesome. Do you have any other takeaways from the episode?
If your best friend doesn't invite themselves over, let themselves in with a key, get a new best friend.
Let's see, my takeaway is Kathy doesn't go here, and I want her to stop going here, and I hope she stops going here soon.
She will, eventually.
All right. This has been a decent-ish episode. It's been a fun time, but this was a lot to get through.
If you listen to the end, good job. We love you.
Congratulations and thank you.
We also love the people who could not, who knew their own boundaries and chose.
We are proud of you.
We are very.
We are proud of you. Great job on that. That takes self-knowledge, and that's hard to get. All right. As always, this has been CBT in the TV, and I am Kacie, not Rachel.
And I am Rachel, not Kacie.
And we will see you all next time. Bye. CBT in the TV is hosted by Rachel Sprague and Kacie Campbell. Our show is produced by Rachel Sprague, Kacie Campbell, and Yakov Paley. Editing by Yakov Paley. Our theme song was written, composed, and performed by Emily McNally.
Please join us on Instagram and TikTok at CBT in the TV for even more fun and access to the resources mentioned in today's episode. Thanks for joining us.